everyone.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Welcome back to Sister Sister, a podcast for spiritual baddies.
It's been 2 years since we last recorded an episode.
After our very long hiatus.
Very, very long. Also unexpected, but it happens. It is what it is.
Oh, yeah. Our
Um,
lives have been very interesting.
so back when we first recorded, Elle was still living in Clifton, New Jersey. Sadly she moved away, but I'll let her get into her whole story.
Yeah, so I unexpectedly moved back home to Phillipsburg, Pennsylvania. What a crazy ride since 2022. I can't believe it's been almost 2 full years that I've been back home. Shortly after that, though, I started a renovation project on what is now my brick and mortar store that I'm sitting in.
Snaps to that, snaps to that.
I officially opened in October of 2023, and I am a full-time business owner. I have been a full-time business owner for almost, well, yeah, 2 years now. It's been 2 years. It was 2 years after we had graduated. So, yeah, it would be 2 years now, which is crazy to say. I still am doing markets, traveling to all kinds of different states. I was just in Virginia for a 5 week stint. I'm going to be in Connecticut for a 3 week stint here soon. Um, but it's really just been me focusing on my business, the Chaotic Crystal Chick Co. brand, releasing new products. I have 10 vendors in my shop aside from myself. And I'm hoping to, eventually get certified in Reiki and do a certificate for like herbal remedies and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I've been up to, just working my butt off and making my business into a very real life thing where I have a physical location.
Love that. Snaps to you, sis. So, what have I done since 2022? Well, I finished grad school. That was 2 years in the making. I studied Master's of Science in Digital Marketing. I worked 2 jobs during that. At one point, even 4 jobs, but I let some go to get new ones in. So I've been very busy. Now, I'm currently doing an internship in Morristown. I can't reveal the name of the location because I'm working there currently, but I will say that it is what I want to do, so that's great. Also, hopefully getting a job sometime soon with that. So prayers, manifestations, I should say, affirmations, all of it to that. And just lifing. Honestly, I can't say it's been a bad road or busy. It was definitely busy, but it definitely has been very rewarding, very challenging, all in one. So I'm very grateful.
Yeah, we've both definitely come a very long way since then. And we kind of just decided on a whim to restart the podcast. We both had been thinking about it, which we actually do have some episodes in the vault that we had for our original season two, which maybe we'll release those at a later date. But we wanted this season to be a little bit more hard hitting. We do have some fun episodes planned as well, but really talking about a lot of issues and things that people aren't necessarily as aware about in the spiritual community and the witch community and things like that, and kind of bringing more light to those areas because it's not something that a lot of people talk about. You see, like, witch talk and things like that, and people don't really, you know, put this kind of information out there.
Yeah, this season I'm very excited for it because we're gonna get deep into what witchiness is. Like we're gonna talk about all different kinds of things. Definitely talk about some topics, and we do have opinions on them. Don't get us wrong. We will be respectful about our opinions, but nonetheless, we do have opinions. And I think this season we're gonna really get into the nitty-gritty. So, without further ado, episode 1, season 2, spiritual psychosis.
Yeah, so this was one that I really wanted to talk about. I guess I'll just start by giving the definition of what spiritual psychosis is. I will put like links in our biographical information. We'll have them up on YouTube as well so that you can see kind of where we're getting our information from. But this like definition is like the basic definition of spiritual psychosis, which typically involves delusional spiritual beliefs that have no basis in reality. It may also involve additional psychotic symptoms such as hallucinations, paranoia, personality changes, and confusion. So, the reason I wanted to bring this topic up is because I've been seeing a lot of it, and not necessarily just on Witch Talk, but in a lot of different spiritual places and religious places in general. Um, a lot of light has come to like Christian cults on TikTok as well, which definitely has a deep history in spiritual psychosis in that aspect too. So it's not something that's just affecting the witch community, but don't get me wrong, it's definitely heavily there. But and like the new age spiritualist community, but it's kind of all over, which I think is why this is such a great first episode.
Think this is a really important episode to talk about because I feel like with the rise and fame of TikTok, things kind of get blown out of proportion. And we do want to preface this by saying, by all means, definitely do your research and definitely, seek your own knowledge. But we will say not everything you see on TikTok or hashtag witch talk is necessarily true. And it's kind of sometimes the unfortunate thing about it is that it's blown out of proportion for clout. And we just want you guys to be really educated when you're learning about these topics. And like I said before, definitely do your own research. Elle and I will link stuff that we actually got our sources from, just so you know that we're not just making stuff up. We do both have journalist backgrounds, so I mean, we do our research. It's our due diligence for you guys. So anyway, without
Yeah. So like the dangers of spiritual psychosis. I mean, the like most kind of well-known one is people experiencing psychosis might have like hallucinations, whether that's like auditory or like visual, tactile, but perceptions of the sensory stimuli that's going on around them that is not rooted in reality. And this isn't to say that like mediumship isn't a thing and stuff like that, but there definitely is like a line where it is a hallucination versus, actual spirituality and actively seeking out um the other side of things and seeing spirits and stuff like that. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that like whenever you are going on this journey, you're told like, oh, you're going to have the dark night of the soul, you're going to have all these things. And then a lot of people kind of get lost in the journey and don't ever come out of that. And that's when they get into this hallucination state and they kind of continue to have like these delusions. Which another like danger is the delusions may kind of have like an element of like being over the top, kind of dramatic, a lot of grandeur, and it can involve a lot of narcissistic thoughts. And that one can really affect other people that are around you in the spiritual community as well. The delusions can have a lot of like narcissistic aspects to them. And a lot of things with spiritual psychosis are very ego based and kind of that thought process of, well, everything I believe is right and you're wrong. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that, Amaya.
I think one of the important things to know about spiritual psychosis is that also some people experiences this desire that they have to fulfill a purpose in their life with this, and not upset whoever they're kind of like seeking guidance from. In extreme cases, I've seen, and this is all fictional, but I recently watched Bird Box 2, and it was weird because if you guys have ever seen Bird Box 1, they kind of get possessed and like something happens with their eyes. In the second movie, basically, without seeking any spoilers, the main character, he lost his daughter due to like the disease that was going around, and I guess in order for them to be together and reunited again, he had to kill all these people, or like kind of push them to kill themselves or put themselves in harm's way. And it was really scary because it was like that's pretty much like psychosis because he's seeing his daughter, but no one else sees him talking to her. So people that are around him are like, "Who are you talking to?" And he's like, "Oh, nobody. I'm just talking to myself." And it was like, wow. So if you ever see it, it was a weird movie, but if you like all things weird and not unnatural, I would say watch Bird Box 2. It's definitely on Netflix. But that's just an extreme case of spiritual psychosis that I've seen recently. I mean, I would also say that they're usually temporary and they're not like long lasting, maybe a couple days to a few weeks. But the spiritual and religious beliefs in itself, on the other hand, and the practices are often long term endeavors. So, this person, like if someone you know or someone you've seen is experiencing signs or symptoms of spiritual psychosis, know that the practice and the belief will always be there, but the psychotic episodes will be short-lived.
Yeah, and psychosis also can start from other like kind of events happening, and this is where like I want to talk a little bit more about like the Christian cults on TikTok that you see all these people speaking out about now is because, they have this like belief system of like, oh, well, I have to recruit this many people by X amount of time, or, the church is going to be upset with me, or God's going to be mad at me, or, like that kind of thing. And that's definitely a very big part of spiritual psychosis is that belief system that like you have to do X, Y, and Z, or the deity or whatever you're worshiping is going to be angry with you. And that's something that like I don't think is touched upon enough because whenever we see spiritual psychosis being talked about, especially on TikTok, which there has been more brought to light, and we'll talk about that specific example that has been kind of everywhere in the last couple months. They aren't really talking a lot about spiritual psychosis in other religious backgrounds. It's always New Age spiritualism. And there is a lot of spiritual psychosis in almost every religious background from what I've been seeing on TikTok. And a lot of people not really kind of acknowledging that that's what it is because they're relating it to New Age spiritualism and witchcraft. Um, Also, with psychotic episodes, there can be a lot of other mental health symptoms that come along with it, which is another thing that you need to watch out for with people. There may be depression, anxiety, anger issues. A lot of people who experience psychosis, there may be like manic highs and then like depressive episodes afterwards. Um, they can be short-lived, they can be as short as a couple hours, a few days, maybe a few weeks, but they're also, can come on and off. That's something that, like, people don't realize is, like, you can be in a psychotic episode and then you're, like, fine, and then, you know, the church leader tells you you have to do X, Y, and Z again, and then it like, almost triggers you back into that state, which is something that, like, is very interesting to me as someone who did do a year of grad school in the mental health field, because it is definitely like a cycle sort of thing. And you can break out of that cycle, but it's going to be increasingly more difficult if you're surrounded by people who are also in a very similar cycle and not challenging you to grow and do better within your own like belief system.
I would also like to add that ultimately that psychosis will just cause functional difficulty. Like these people are never gonna really act normal again. Like it'll probably take a lot of effort to kind of snap out of it, but not really because they're always going to be dealing like with triggers and things that will bring them back to that psychotic episode. And obviously, I want to say like in the past, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced spiritual psychosis, but they didn't kind of know what to do about like handling the person in that episode. So they kind of just threw them in a mental hospital and then never really helped them. Kind of just sedated them all the time to kind of shut them up, which is not the right way to do things, but it is the reality. Obviously, now with more research and more, resources available, um, as you know, if know someone or if you feel like you're feeling signs of this, do always get mental help. And there are resources there that are help available to help you, and they are free. So um, do take what we say also with a grain of salt. We're not experts on this topic, but we do know, like, if you are struggling and you want help, there's help there.
Yeah, and one of the biggest examples of spiritual psychosis in the new age spiritual community that I've seen recently, especially, it was all over TikTok. Every creator I followed on Witch Talk or Spiritual Talk was stitching this video or making a video with a clip of it in the beginning. And um I want to say her name is Shannon, I think. I believe is her name, but she makes music, I guess, I mean, it's auto-tuned music, but it's music. And she talked in one of her, like, more recent songs about how she had went to the mountains of Peru and did ayahuasca and how she used her intention to heal her own kidney infection. And, like, that is the kind of extremes we are talking about with spiritual psychosis. And it's not to say that this girl actually believes that and that she is experiencing spiritual psychosis herself. A lot of people jump to that assumption, which I don't think is fair to make that assumption whenever you only see a video of someone on the internet, because you don't know what their life is like and if they actually truly believe they healed their kidney infection. But those kind of statements are what is going to be showing, the spiritual psychosis. Those kinds of things where someone's like, "Oh, well, I was able to heal my own kidney infection with just my power of belief." Like, no, it's not how it works.
Kind of segue into this next portion of spiritual psychosis. We have an article that we both read on behaveo.com. I think I said that right. And it's about spiritual psychosis, a sane awakening, or mental illness. So, again, there is a very fine line between having an awakening versus experiencing mental illness symptoms. So if you have ever experienced a spiritual awakening, you know that it's a powerfully transformative experience. For some individuals, it may start out as a spiritual quest, but it could ultimately lead to a mental health crisis. And as we already described, spiritual psychosis is this phenomenon where you might start feeling symptoms that may seem like spiritual awakening, but actually it is to an undiagnosed um, illness, disorder, however you want to call it. So in the article, it kind of talks about understanding spiritual psychosis and what it is. We can talk about some of the other experiences that, they mentioned here that we didn't already mention. And it's kind of just, it varies from each person, but some of the symptoms include intense religious or spiritual experiences, altered states of consciousness, hearing voices or other psychic phenomena, feeling that you have special powers or abilities, paranoia or fear of persecution, or social withdrawal and isolation. Obviously, there's like 10 of these here, but these are like the top 5 and probably more common ones. So you gotta be aware of like the symptoms of you're experiencing. Obviously, when you're experiencing a spiritual awakening, you might feel like your head's clear. Let's say you start dreaming again. Maybe you were in a depressive state for a while and you weren't dreaming. You kind of like slept, but you didn't have like your normal dream experience. Like Usually we have about like what 5 to 7 dreams a night, and they kind of just transition from one to the other, and then you wake up and you're like, what the hell happened in my dream? I can't remember because like it went 5 different ways. But if you're like suddenly, oh my god, I see clear now, like, it's great that you're having dreams again, number 1, but you gotta be, like, very wary about what the dreams mean, and this is an episode that I definitely wanna talk about what dreams mean at a later point, but you don't wanna, like, just be like, "Oh my god, got these dreams, what do I gotta do next?" Like, it takes time to develop your spiritual awakening. I can tell you from firsthand experience, like, 4 years ago, when I started dabbling into witchiness and spirituality, I am nowhere near where I am now. Now I can say, like, I have dreams that are more like warnings or, like, just like, "Oh, just keep in mind this is gonna happen," and then it actually happens, and I'm like, "Didn't I experience this already?" And it's deja vu. But also things like dreaming about certain messages or seeing certain signs when you're like out and about, most commonly angel numbers or like things that remind you of other things. So I don't want to talk too much. And I wanted to know, Elle, if you wanted to add anything to that effect.
Yeah, so one other thing I want to talk about that was in that article is like the idea of a sane awakening, which most awakenings, like, you're gonna have a positive experience from it, right? That's like the goal whenever you go through a spiritual awakening. You have the dark night of the soul, which is gonna be rough, but the overall goal is, to find meditation, to find mindfulness, to really come out as a better version of yourself who is more aware of their emotions, is more aware of their healing that they need to do, and things like that. However, a lot of people get stuck in that dark night of the soul, and I think that's where this, like, kind of flip to spiritual psychosis happens, is because they aren't coming out on the other end with this spiritual, like, positivity and feeling better. They're just kinda stuck in that spot. And I think it's also really damaging that a lot of people on TikTok are constantly like, "You need to do shadow work, you need to do shadow work, you need to do shadow work," like, when you're starting your spiritual journey. And while shadow work can be incredibly helpful for people, it also can be incredibly damaging if you have unresolved trauma that you have not talked with a mental health professional about. It can send you back into those traumatic states that you lived through. So there is kind of, like we have been saying, a fine line between like what is going to be good for you and cause a positive experience in the spiritual awakening, and what's going to trigger you and possibly send you down this rabbit hole of spiritual psychosis. And one other thing that I like wanted to touch on from the article was that, ultimately you have to kind of like go through this awakening for yourself to understand. If you haven't gone through it, you're not going to have any idea what we're talking about. But at the same time, if you get stuck in that negative place, that's when you want to seek help. You don't want to wait until you're like full well down the road and you still are just stuck in this mindset of like, I don't know what's going on. Everything's a sign, like every little thing. Like, I promise you, unless there's like 100 crows that flock to a tree outside, one bird chirping outside is not a sign in most cases. I used to have hundreds of crows flock to a tree when I was going through my beginning of my spiritual awakening. Ask Amaya, she knows. I would send pictures and be like, where did they come from? But there's obvious signs, and it's trying to like not put necessarily like meaning into every little thing, because there are some things that it's just life. Like things just happen. Bad things happen all the time, good things happen all the time. You can't necessarily give value to every little detail of your life.
Right, and that kind of also goes with like superstition as well. Like you might knock over the thing of salt in your kitchen, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything's gonna happen. But it, of course, out of habit, you're still gonna throw a little salt behind you just to make sure nothing happens and not jinx yourself. Same way, like they say, I don't know, a broom falls in your house, and that means someone doesn't belong in your house. I mean, obviously it's a sign, but don't always like be like, "Oh my god, gotta get this person out." Like, don't freak out about it. Just kind of like take it with a grain of salt, you know? And you also have to remember with spirituality, it's learning about what works for you, what doesn't work for you, as well as kind of just like realizing you're learning about yourself in a new way, in a higher way. Like you're learning to become your highest self, and that takes time. So don't just get obsessed with like I need to do be my best self and I need to do this, that, and the third to get there. It takes time, and perfection is not a thing. It doesn't exist. Like,
No, and people will think like your spiritual journey, like once you go through your dark night of the soul, you're set. No, that's not how a spiritual journey works. Like you're going to constantly be changing, growing, evolving. And that's
right.
also why this is such an important topic because you could trip into spiritual psychosis during any part of that evolving. It isn't just at the beginning of your spiritual journey. It can happen at any time.
Exactly. And to kind of wrap this segment up, we did want to mention a few conventional mental health treatments as stated in the article. These commonly include medications, therapy, and other forms of psychiatric intervention, but some other alternative and holistic approaches include mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and other techniques that are designed to promote spiritual grounding and connections. And even though these practices don't necessarily solve the problem, they can help you get to that point where you feel better, and it'll continue to help you get out of it, not get out of it, but like continue to help you get to where you need to be.
And now we will move into the Astrology Almanac, which is a new segment on this show.
Yes. This is an idea
Amazing.
that we decided that we wanted to do because at the point of time when we were first starting our podcast, we didn't know much about astrology, or at least I can say I didn't. I still am not perfect, but I know more than I did then. So that's something.
Today we have a new moon in Cancer. This moon, as any new moon, is a great time for manifesting. Specifically, with this new moon in Cancer, you should be working on manifesting a good foundation. It's a good time for family planning, starting creative projects, and finding domestic bliss. Later in the week on July 8th, Venus in Cancer will sextile with Uranus in Taurus, building on these plans from the new moon and creating a better home life for yourself. And for some, you will see new creative projects starting to take off and add to your finances. Finally, on June 11th, Venus will enter Leo, turning up the heat on summer romances. Your romantic life could be much more vibrant, but try to steer clear of any drama.
That's tea. Anyway, this is really nice to know because this is a great time. Summer is a great time to kind of like improve yourself. And a lot of people go on these like different improving themselves journey, whether that is like doing their hair or, starting something new in their life, like a new hobby, or like they decide they want to get fit. Like I feel like summer is such a good time to work on the things that you want to achieve because come winter it's like I don't want to do anything. I want to stay inside and sleep all day, which is totally normal. Due to the sun being out less, if you guys didn't know, it causes you to want to be more inside. So if you feel like you don't want to go to work in the winter or you don't want to get out of bed, there's good reason. Just like the animals hibernate, we kinda do that too, but not
I
24
highly
hours a day.
suggest getting a sunlight lamp. Those things are amazing, especially because I live in a basement.
That makes sense, or just, kind of incorporate a winter routine that will kinda keep you motivated throughout the year. More on that later. We don't wanna
Yeah.
take too much time because it's now tarot time, tarot time. Here we are for tarot time.
Almost couldn't get them out of the box.
Drum roll, please.
So I am using the Tattoo Tarot.
Ooh, is that a new deck?
It's the one I got when I was in New Orleans.
Oh, right. Elle did
Yeah.
go New Orleans, I think after she moved home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Literally, I planned a trip. But what does the collective need to know? I planned a trip as my I need to find myself again journey.
Love that.
All right. Ooh, we got the magician.
That's a
I
good
love the
card.
magician. The magician is all about manifesting. It is all about things coming into fruition. It is about really kind of focusing on what you want and not being afraid to go after it. So, what a wonderful card matched with this Cancer new moon.
Matched with
I
this first episode of season 2. We got a fruitful summer ahead of us.
we do. Everybody does.
Period. Well, that's all we have for today, but make sure you stay tuned and follow us on Instagram and TikTok, where we will be posting snippets and fun, cute little things for you guys to enjoy, and more stuff coming soon.
Yes, the next episode will be out the following Friday,
Just so you guys know, we release on Fridays. I think at what time again?
2 p.m.
2 p.m. on
Eastern
Fridays.
Standard Time.
Yes, Eastern Standard Time, our time. So you might have to wait.
Bye, guys.